Every once in a while, a story slips through. A scientist dies, is ruled as an accident, or maybe something a little more personal. It gets reported, explained, filed away, and then it disappears. Most people never think about it again because, on its own, it doesn't feel like anything unusual. But then it happens again. Another scientist, another sudden death, another explanation that feels complete on paper, but incomplete in reality. Same kind of person, same kind of work, and eventually you stop asking what happened. You start asking something else. Why does this keep happening to people working on the future? Because that's the common thread. Not fame, not politics, not randomness, but proximity to ideas that matter. These ideas shape energy, defense, technology, and in some cases, entire industries. And the closer you get to those ideas, the more pressure builds around them. Financial pressure, institutional pressure, and sometimes even geopolitical pressure. And in environments like that, things don't always break away cleanly. Sometimes they fracture. So when that happens, when people working in those environments start dying, is it coincidence? Is it something structural? Something about the pressure itself? Or is it something else entirely? Tonight, we're not going to jump to conclusions. We're going to look at the cases, what was claimed, what was confirmed, and more importantly, the space in between. Amy Eskridge was working on a question that sounds simple on the surface until you actually think about it a little bit. How do you move something through space? Better than how we currently do it. Not faster in the science fiction sense, not warp drives, just more efficiently. Less fuel, less waste, more control. But propulsion isn't just engineering, it's physics. And when you start pushing the limits of physics, you end up in territory that most institutions are too hesitant to touch. So she founded the Institute for Exotic Science, a small independent research effort focused on things like electromagnetic propulsion, field-based movement systems, energy-efficient alternatives to rockets. And here's where things get interesting. These ideas aren't exactly widely accepted, but they're also not meaningless. Because historically, a lot of technologies that started on the fringe eventually became real, which puts her work in a bit of a strange position. It's not mainstream, but it's also not irrelevant, especially when you consider anything that improves propulsion matters to a lot of people. Aerospace, defense, long-term energy systems. And at some point before her death, she started telling people close to her that she felt like she was being targeted. Not ignored, not dismissed, targeted. One of the more extreme claims that later circulated was that she believed she was being affected by a directed energy weapon. That's not a small statement. That's not frustration. That sounds like a very specific type of fear. And when you hear something like that, your instinct is to ask, what made her think that? But this is where a line has to be drawn. There is no confirmed evidence, no official findings, no technical verification that supports the use of any kind of directed energy system against her. No investigation has substantiated that claim. And without that, what you're left with is a statement, not proof. But there are a lot of people, a lot of corporations, a lot of foreign governments, maybe even our own, who might want that technology for themselves, or may want to keep someone else from getting it. But we also have to look at the type of environment she's working in. She's running a small, independent research organization. It's not stable. It's not predictable. Funding doesn't come easily. Grants are competitive. And unconventional ideas, they face constant resistance. That creates pressure, not just professionally, but personally. You're trying to prove something that most people don't even believe in. You're trying to get support from systems that don't prioritize your work. And over time, that can lead to frustration and a sense of being blocked. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing external is going on, but it does mean the internal pressure can become very intense. And when that pressure builds, some people break. In 2022, she was found dead. Official ruling, suicide. And just like that, everything collapses into a single conclusion. But the story doesn't end there, because now you have a person working on unconventional future-facing ideas, claims that she made before her death, an official explanation that doesn't address all those claims. so you're left with two narratives: one grounded in evidence, one shaped by context and perception and unanswered questions. And there's no clean way to reconcile them. Because once you hear a claim like that, it changes how you look at everything that comes next. Before this case became part of a bigger online pattern, it was something much more simple: a missing persons case. A woman went hiking in the mountains in Southern California and didn't come back. Her name was Monica Reza. She was 60 years old, and she disappeared on June 22nd, 2025, while hiking near Mount Waterman in the Angeles National Forest. Early reporting said she was last seen around 9 a.m. near the 6,000-foot gate on Angeles Crest Highway, and search teams began looking for her after she didn't return. That part's real. That's no part of internet myth. But the reason her name is pulled into this story is because who she was before she disappeared. She was described in later reporting as a materials engineer, metallurgist, with ties to aerospace materials work, including airjet Rocketdyne. Some public and political sources also describe her as a former JPL figure and even as a director of a material processing group. But the exact job title claims are a little less consistent when you start looking at things. But here's what matters. Rocket materials aren't just ordinary engineering. The materials that survive inside a rocket system are part of what allows modern rocket aerospace to even exist. So when someone with that kind of background vanishes in the mountains, people notice. Now here's the claim side. Online, her disappearance gets framed as part of a broader cluster. Another scientist, another aerospace connection, another person tied to high-level technical work who disappeared under unusual circumstances. And when people start to stack the cases next to each other, the story starts to feel a lot bigger than one missing hiker. It starts to feel like a pattern. Now, to be fair, a little bit of more grounded context is also in play here. That national park, it's not a city park. It's rugged terrain. Trails can become dangerous very quickly. Weather changes, elevation, injury, dehydration, a wrong turn, a steep drop. Any number of those things can turn a routine hike into a search and rescue operation. So, one interpretation is simple and tragic. She went hiking, something went wrong, and the terrain swallowed the evidence. But there's another interpretation, and one that keeps people watching, built on the proximity. Proximity to aerospace, proximity to advanced materials, proximity to the same kinds of institutions and technologies that already feel hidden from ordinary people. That's why this case becomes so powerful. Not only does it prove a conspiracy, proximity to the same kinds of institutions and technologies that already feel hidden from ordinary people. That's why this case becomes so powerful. This is 100% a real missing persons case with a real aerospace materials connection. There's no definitive link between the two, but there is a gap between the facts and the unknown. Then there's William McCasland. In this case, it's different because he wasn't an independent researcher. He wasn't a fringe figure. He wasn't someone operating outside of the system. He was the system. A retired U.S. Air Force Major General, an astronautical engineer, a former commander at the Air Force Research Laboratory. That matters, because the Air Force Research Laboratory isn't just another military office. It's where future weapons, aerospace systems, directed energy research, space technologies, sensors, materials, and advanced defense concepts move from theory to reality. So when someone with that background disappears, people notice. He was reported missing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, after last being seen near his home on February 27, 2026. Authorities issued a silver alert because of a medical concern, and reports of his phone, glasses, wearable devices were all left behind, while items such as hiking boots, a wallet, and revolver were missing. That combination is what made the case feel strange immediately. A retired general, a man with a classified aerospace background, gone from his home, phone left behind, glasses left behind, search teams involved, but still no answer to the public. Interestingly, he's already been mentioned in several UFO-related discussions. He's worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which has a long history of UFO lore because of his historical relationship to government UFO investigations and the Roswell incident. It doesn't prove anything, but it does explain why people immediately started connecting the dots. He had the resume, the proximity, the classified background, and then he vanished. All while carrying nothing to give away his location, but he was armed, or someone was. But let's bring it back down for a minute. He's 68, and authorities had already cited a medical concern when they issued the silver alert. He was last seen near his home, and the missing items suggest several possibilities that don't require a conspiracy. He could have gone out intentionally, gotten disoriented, suffered a medical event, any number of things. But because of who he was, those explanations don't really feel very satisfying. So on one hand, you have an old retired man with medical concerns who went missing, and search teams are still trying to find him. On the other hand, you have a former Air Force Research Laboratory commander tied to special programs, UFO adjacent discussions, disappeared without his phone or glasses, right as public attention around missing scientists and classified research was rising. Same event, two very different stories. All of these cases might have you asking what really happened, but maybe the more important question is, what did they know?